I'd like to see if you know who said these words. Shout it out if you know who did. I don't know what your destiny will be, but one thing I know, that among ones among you who will be really happy are those who have thought or sought and found how to serve. Does anybody know who said that? Very good. You win the prize. I love that. Great men tend to say great things, but great men also tend to do great things. Greatness is truly born not out of words, but from actions. Hurting, hungry, or hostage people don't want eloquent words spoken about them, but engaged action on their behalf. Fellow Rotarians, your service to humankind is a thread in a beautiful and long-standing tapestry woven throughout history. You serve today in and among a legacy of greatness, as others serve besides the greatness in you. So to conclude from Dr. Schweitzer, there is no higher religion than human service. To work for the common good is the highest creed. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. At this time, I'd like to invite Nancy Austin, broker associate with Porchlight Real Estate Group, to give our secretary's report since Christy Schaefer is not here today. Nancy, come on up.
Thank you, President Jim. Welcome to Denver Rotary Guest Day. This is a great day. As you have probably noticed, our membership team is really out in force today. Rotarians, be sure to extend a Rotary hand of welcome to all of our guests today. Also, on Tuesday, October the 21st, from 5:30 to 7:30, the membership team and Club 31 is hosting an event called Rotarians Riding in Cars. It's a special evening to meet and recruit new potential Rotarians. Invitations are available today at the door. This will be a unique evening highlighting the strengths and achievements of Club 31. Rotarians who are bringing new recruits are warmly welcome to an evening of great food, good beverages, fine entertainment, and great conversation about what makes Club 31 so unique. Bring your new recruit and join us at the Colorado Automobile Dealers Association headquarters. Guest reservations are due in the Rotary office by October the 17th. We have lots of prospective new members today, and we're excited about that. When I call your name, would you please stand up with your sponsor? Pete Nemeth is with Daniel Schrader, and he's in the real estate business. Welcome. Kristen Schmidt is with Lonnie Langton, and she is KeyBank Retail Banking. Welcome. Brett Baird is with David Pitchford, and he is a mortgage lender with Citywide Home Loans. Welcome, Brett. Emily McKissick Diaz is with Dianea Whye, and she is a she is with Legal Shield Insurance, the regional manager. Did I get that right? Welcome. Karen Gilbert is a guest of Vicki David, and she is the Client Development Director for Page Architects. Welcome. Chris Roper is another prospective new member. He is a guest of Jim Goddard, and he is with Elevation Digital Media. Chris? Welcome. Vladimir Matakov is a guest of Sandeep Kapoor, and he is a senior leader team member with Chick-fil-A. Welcome. Another guest, a guest of Lonnie Langton is Dianea Whye, and Dianea is a family law attorney. Welcome, Dianea. We have one visiting Rotarian, and that is Bob Rover, and he's visiting with Sue Davis Hornsby, and he is from the South Jeffco Club, correct? Good. Welcome to everyone. Just a quick note that I want to make in case I forget it in a moment. Maya Kim Ziegler just got back from her honeymoon, so we're glad to have you back. Hope you had a great time. We have some other announcements. Just a reminder that we will meet off-site for the Rotary District Area 1 Club Assembly on Wednesday evening, October the 29th at the Federal Reserve Bank Convention Center. That's the same place we met last year. Details and reservation information is available on DACDB. Member reservation links are also provided in our Tuesday and Friday email blast, and reservations for that are due on October the 23rd. Don't forget to make your reservations for the Branch Rickey Award banquet this year. Remember that the new date is on Friday, November the 14th. The new location is the McNeil Civic Center building, and there's also going to be the extra innings after party. Sounds like fun. As you heard last week, if 2/3 of our members attend the banquet, our presenting sponsor, AMG National Trust Bank, will contribute an additional $10,000 to the event. Every dollar of this amount will be granted out in support of our club's programs, so it's all up to us. We have some sad family Rotary news. Longtime member Rex Post passed away Sunday, September the 28th. Services are going to be held Friday, October the 3rd at 11 o'clock at Fairmount's Mortuary Chapel on 430 South Quebec. And another email that came today that Darlene just got is that Fred Diss, that his father and fellow Rotarian Bill Diss passed away this morning. So we are so sorry to hear that, and an email will go out this afternoon with more information. We have an update on Peter Bowes. Fellow Rotarian Chuck Averill stopped by the office to visit Peter Bowles and updated us on this information. He enjoyed an absolutely delightful hour with Peter. They had a wonderful conversation, and his ability to comprehend is quite good. Physical therapy is going well. He enjoys visitors and be sure to coordinate that with his wife. Thank you so much. Enjoy your day.
Thank you, Nancy. And now it's my pleasure to invite a couple of new members and their sponsors. Dianea Whye will be presented by Carter Sales, and Mark Rodgers will be presented by Grant Wilkins. So Grant and Mark, if you could join us on the stage as well. Carter, can I turn the microphone over to you?
Thank you, President Jim. Just real quick, if anybody hasn't looked at the mountains yet, snow-capped. We live in a beautiful state. Good afternoon, everybody. Rotarians and invited honored guests. It is my distinct pleasure today to introduce our newest member of Club 31, Dianea Whye. Dianea is not new to Rotary. She was a member of the Aurora Club for a little over 7 years, and she has now transferred to our club because her job situation was closer to our club. Probably many of you have already met Dianea from her several visits that she's had here, because what she does is she comes to the table and goes to every person at the table and introduces herself. So I'm sure that she's very familiar to most of the people here today. Dianea grew up in Brooklyn, and she decided that she wanted to go and see the world. So what better opportunity to see the world than to enlist in the Army? So where does she end up on her first world stop? Fort Rucker, Alabama. And she was enrolled in the helicopter flight operations training school there. Once she got done with her service in the Army, she realized that Brooklyn was not the center of the universe that she thought. So she wanted to see new horizons, get some new perspective. So where did she end up? Here in Denver in the late 1970s. So she raised her 3 children here, who also live here now, and she's now blessed with 3 grandchildren here in Colorado. Dianea loves the outdoors. She loves gardening. She loves to go to the park and listen to jazz concerts, and she's also a year-round barbecue enthusiast. You need to see Andre, because I think you and Andre can share some great secrets. Andre is our president-elect, and I'm sure you've met him. For the last 21 years, Diana has been in the fundraising business for higher education and human services, and she is now the Director of Development for a nonprofit by the name of Laradon. They specialize in providing services to children and adults with developmental disabilities. Her life is a continuous adventure, and she hopes in a few years to move on to her next great adventure, and I'm sure that all of us will be involved in knowing what you're going to be able to do. Her passion and her enthusiasm for Rotary is evident, and I know that she brought Emily as a guest, and we really appreciate that. So what I'd like everyone to do is please join me in welcoming Dianea Whye to Club 31.
You'll get a chance to rise again, so please be seated. We have one more new member.
Thanks, President Jim. Today it's my real pleasure to introduce Mark Rodgers, who's the architect for the University of Denver, my alma mater, class of 1947. I met him recently when the new chancellor was introduced to DU and to the faculty and some of the alumni, and was very impressed because for years I've watched that campus, well, ever since 1947, transform from what it used to be into one of the top 10 in the United States. And Mark has had a lot to do with that. Mark was born to Commodore and Mrs. J.M. Rodgers. And the reason I mention Commodore, that's why he lived in 10 different states, Italy, and Cuba, growing up, and he's since been to 14 other countries. Upon graduation from university, he journeyed to Colorado to pursue his wife of 21 years, Valerie. They are now the proud parents of Isabel, Christopher, and Lindsay. Mark has worked on $1 billion of construction, including every DU project since 1994. He was appointed the architect of the University of Denver in 1999 when Cab Childress, his mentor, retired, and has further given Chancellor Ritchie's design direction that unifies the campus in a manner that embraces its history, counts for enduring design, and celebrates an enthusiasm for DU's future. He has served leadership roles for community organizations such as Scoutmaster for his son's Cub Scout Pack, President of the Board of Directors for the Denver Brass, and Vice President of the Summit Glen Homeowners Association. When I met him, I told him about our Temple Buell Scholarship Program, and knew that he could be a tremendous help to us because this year we didn't have any qualified applicants. When I mentioned this to Dan Ritchie recently, and of course Mark worked under Dan for 15 years or so when Dan was the chancellor at DU, Dan's face just lit up, just was so enthused about it because Dan is chairman of the board of the Temple Buell Foundation, and now he's going to have one of his good friends and very appropriate architects help us select the candidates to send abroad. Mark realizes that every good architect can benefit tremendously from a year's study abroad. So he's looking forward to getting involved in our Temple Buell Scholarship Foundation Committee. Please welcome Mark Rodgers.
And now it's my pleasure. Great. Thank you. It's my honor as president of the Rotary Club of Denver to welcome Dianea Whye and Mark Rodgers to Rotary. Dianea and Mark, Rotary is a worldwide organization of business and professional leaders who provide humanitarian service, encourage high ethical standards in all vocations, and help build goodwill and peace. You've been invited to join the Rotary Club of Denver, become a member of a service organization that has true impact globally. You were selected because you hold in common with our members the values of service, leadership, integrity, fellowship, and diversity. We invite you to get engaged in service opportunities and start networking with your fellow Rotarians. Once you take those actions, you'll discover the true essence of Rotarians, people who place service above self. Thank you for making this decision to begin your Rotary journey with Denver Club 31. It's now our role to engage your passion, and together we must focus our efforts so that this club can reach its maximum capacity and potential. Thank you, Carter and Grant, for inspiring and inviting Diana and Mark. Fellow Rotarians, now you can please stand and help me welcome our newest members, Dianea Whye and Mark Rodgers. Thank you all. And now I'd like to invite Tom Woodruff and Tom Luehrs from St. Francis Center for a Soup Day check presentation. Tom?
I'm a volunteer down at St. Francis Center and am pleased to present this check for $1,250 to Tom Luehrs, who is our executive officer, and he'll tell you what we do and where this check is going to go.
Thank you. St. Francis Center is a day center for people who are homeless. We draw people from all over the metro area, but particularly downtown. What we try to do primarily at St. Francis Center is two things. One, we try to get people employment. Last month, we got 41 people full-time permanent employment, 19 of those people in the construction industry. Last year, we got 465 people full-time permanent employment. When people get employment, they're able to make their own decisions and live lives that are independent of any service provider. The other thing that's really important is many people are having a difficult time finding housing. Last year we were able to get 230 people housing, and many of the people that we serve are able to work, but there are some who are disabled, either physically or mentally, and that's why they end up on the streets. So finding them housing that they can afford is crucial to their lives. The other services we provide at St. Francis Center, which is open every day of the week from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., we give people an opportunity to take showers, get clothing. They can store things with us. They can use phones. They receive messages. We also have a health clinic that's open 7 days a week. People are also able to see counselors. We have a mental health psychotherapist on staff. Again, what we're trying to do at St. Francis Center is really move people out of homelessness into society, back off the streets and into their own homes. We do that because of the support of many people. We have about 170 volunteers, and if you would like to volunteer or know somebody that you think should volunteer, let me know. We have a website, St. Francis Center, you can look us up, and we're always looking for people who will support us like you have today. Thank you very much.
Very worthy cause. Thank you, Tom and Tom. That's why we do our soup days, is so that we can save some dollars and pass them along to worthy projects such as this one. We're going to have to cut our other announcements short today, but I do want to make just a quick plug and remind you all that we do have two foundations, and we give gifts and projects through both foundations, one of which is the Rotary Foundation International. That project is being funded, or the projects that we have going forward, such as the Bosnia project, which was mentioned in the September issue of Rotarian Magazine, is funded through those global grants to which we donate through things such as our Denver Rotary Club, San Diego Rotary Club Challenge. And so I just want to remind you all that Don Luehrs is heading up that effort, and if you would like to make a donation, you can stick a needle in that little toy that San Diego calls a mascot. So at this time, I'd like to invite Grant Wilkins back up to the stage so that he can introduce our speaker. Today, excuse me. Today we have a speaker that actually relates very closely to the reason why I'm in Rotary, or at least the reason why Dr. Muftik asked me to come, and that was to be a part of Russian health fairs. And Nine Health Fair was very supportive of a project that Grant had over several years. So at this time, Grant, please introduce our speaker.
Thanks, President Jim. Actually, Jim's being very modest because about 3 years ago we brought 36 Russian doctors, healthcare professionals to Denver just to learn how Nine Health Fair functions. We took them through 2 different health fairs every morning between 7 and noon, and in the afternoon they'd meet with the governor, the mayor, take them to Estes Park, what have you. And Jim was a vital part of that. It's my pleasure today to introduce one of the great humanitarians that I've had the pleasure of knowing for many years, and died in the war Rotarian, believing in world peace and understanding, and knowing that it only happens by people-to-people contact. If we left it up to Moscow and D.C., you can see what a mess we would be in our world today. Sharon Tennison is founder and president of the Center for Citizens Initiative. She was a chief forerunner in citizen diplomacy between the U.S. and the USSR during the nuclear arms race in 1983. The FBI, CIA, KGB followed her questionable and innovative manner of bringing American and Soviet peoples together. CCI, which is the Center for Citizens Initiative, transported Alcoholics Anonymous members to the USSR to share their message of sobriety, starting AA across 11 different time zones. Environmental and agricultural programs sprang up. Ordinary Soviet citizens began traveling to 264 cities on CCI programs in 1988 and 89. By the way, she was very involved with the U.S. State Department and USAID programs all this time. Sharon began training Soviet entrepreneurs in business development during the last year of communism in 1989. The U.S. Department of State began funding CCI in 1993, and Sharon was given a White House appointment in 1994. She developed 4 more business management programs over the next 6 years. Some 400 American Rotary clubs provided pro bono business training and home hosting for some 5,000 young Russian business owners, thus forging innumerable human links between the 2 countries. As a result, 25 or more Rotary clubs were established across Western Russia, where 90% of Russia's population resides. By the way, this past year, Sharon was a keynote speaker at Rotary Day at United Nations. Please welcome Sharon Tennison.
Well, I'm looking for, just a minute. Can you hear me? I'm looking for a way to not have a podium in front of me so I can feel like I'm with you all. And first of all, I want to thank Grant. He has been wonderful in supporting us throughout the years, and even called me 2 or 3 months ago and said, you know, there are places you can speak in Denver if you come out here, and I'll help you. And so I'm here today because, and going to clubs from Colorado Springs up to Estes Park. I did 3 clubs yesterday, morning, noon, and night. I'm doing 3 presentations today, and so it's never ending when I get on the road. But thanks to Grant, I'm here. And thanks to you for inviting me to come, and also for the fact that you did host some of our delegations that came. I don't know how many delegations you hosted, but I'm deeply grateful to you for that. But after this introduction, I want to tell you, I am a very ordinary American woman. I have 4 children, 9 grandchildren, and I just simply want to see the world work better. And in 1983, as Grant said, I became just panicked about the nuclear arms race. For some reason or other, it hadn't dawned on me how dangerous this would be until that time. And so I started asking everybody, what can we do about this? How can we bring those arsenals down? And nobody had an idea. And so finally I just decided I was going to try to get under the Iron Curtain and see whether these people grew horns and tails or not. And so I was careful in putting together a delegation of 24 business and professional people, no peaceniks or anything like that involved. We went to examine who are these Soviet people. And we got over there 16 days after the Cal airliner was shot down, and we found ourselves on the streets with we created little cards that said in Russian, "I'm an American traveling in your country, and I'm deeply concerned about the relationship between our two nations. If you know anyone who can interpret for us, put your telephone number on the back of this card, and we would love to have a home visit with you." That was the way we developed our networks at the bottom of the country. And of course, networks at the bottom of the country really can't do what needed to be done, but at least we were getting to know the Soviet people. Then we were in their homes, in their apartments, rather small apartments, getting to know what they're like, what they thought, whether they support the system or not, and that was the beginning. Out of that came things like AA and numerous programs that were multi-year programs, and eventually the U.S. government began funding most of them. We were running a budget of about $10 million a year with 5 or 6 million in-kind contributions. And Rotary was a huge part of that. So thank you so much for being a part of that also. I'm going to show you a few things about Rotary in Russia, a few slides. And after that, if we have time, we might have a discussion about what's going on in Russia, Washington, Ukraine, Crimea, and EU, okay? Let me see if I can work this technology. Okay, ladies. Let's see whether I need help or not. Here's our Rotary map. And this was made about, half a dozen years ago. You can see all of those dots in the white, that whole white region is Russia. 11 time zones, as Grant said. You see the mountain range right in the middle. That divides West Russia, this is West Russia on this left-hand side, Eastern Russia and Siberia on the other side. And you see little dots throughout, and those were Rotary clubs at the time that this map was made. We have a few more now, and the districts have been divided up into two. There was 2224, 2225, and 220. And I'm proud to tell you that our Russian alumni of the program, the latest business program, were district governors this year, of both of those districts. So we have a pretty good reputation in Russia for helping develop Rotary. What happened was most of these Russians that came over were, about 5,000 of them were sponsored by Rotarians, and so therefore they went to Rotary clubs every week. And what they took home was, we need to have Rotary in our own cities. And generally what they would do is contact the city that they came from in the U.S., and then they would begin helping them understand how they could start a small nucleus of Rotary in their city. Eventually they were chartered. And today I have the opportunity to go to a Rotary club in almost every city that I visit, even out in Siberia. It's just wonderful. I'm going to show you a few faces so that put a human touch on it. This was the very first Rotary club that we know was formed as a result of our delegates. Olga Kryakova was our director of our program throughout about 20 years, and she was, that whole club was sponsored by the Ohio Lakewood Rotary Club. Wonderful club. This is another shot of them. This was their first president. They're very active today. This is some of the activity that they got into. They were trying to fight corruption in their cities, and then they also were working with orphanages, but this was their association of entrepreneurs that did the corruption work. They literally created the first conference held in Russia by entrepreneurs in order to out the officials of their city who were asking for demanding the bribes. And all of the people on that front row are delegates of our program. In the audience, by the way, were the city officials, including the mayor. This developed into a shouting match between those in the audience and those who were on stage. It was the first time they had really had a showdown about what was going on, resulting in the corruption that was so prevalent. This Rotary Club was out in Ekaterinburg, in the middle of that mountain range, and it's grown considerably. Wonderful people, and they have orphanages as their service project. Love this man right here. He's in St. Petersburg, and he was helping us to start the White Knights Club back when. What he picked up in the United States, in addition to business, he picked up the idea of PTAs, because his home host just simply took him to a PTA meeting. They exposed him to everything while they were here. But this is the only one that I know of who went back to Russia and created a PTA in his children's school. Whoops. Man on the right, Andrei Skorik from down in Rostov-on-Don. And this is one of the areas where the refugees are coming in from Ukraine now. And the last I spoke with him by email, got an email from him, he said we were just deluged with refugees, and they're just trying to provide refrigeration for milk and the baby foods and things like this as they pass through the region and go on to other places. We took 100 of these Russian entrepreneurs to Washington 3 different times in 2001, 2004, 2007, trying to explain to the American Congress what needed to happen in Russia, what they needed from America, patience amongst other things, because they were trying to do something that they had never done and never conceived of doing in their life. They didn't know the Soviet Union would ever break up, and all of a sudden they were having to build businesses and do whatever they could to survive. And so I hope that with this, we would have some serious interest in U.S. Congress, and we did. Richard Luehrs was very good with us with funding. This young man is the president of the Rotary Club in Volgograd this year. His name is Sasha Malashkin. He happened to be on one of the delegations. He was on food processing, I think. And at this moment, when this slide was taken, he was in the main State Department huge auditorium where Colin Powell and other dignitaries gave their speeches and so forth. He was so compelling that Colin Powell took the mic and left the stage, and walked down to go out of the room with his bodyguards. And he broke ranks when he got back to the back of the room where Sasha was, and ran across the room and shook his hand. And we have this photo. It just happened accidentally. But it was a wonderful time. Colin Powell had just gotten through telling how important it is for Russia and the United States to work together, and what his own personal experience had been with the Russians. This is a book that has come out of all of these experiences. I wrote the book that covers 3 decades. It's here. I only have a couple of copies with it, but if you're interested in buying it, it's through Amazon. It's called The Power of Impossible Ideas, because everything that we did in the beginning was impossible in the Soviet Union and in early Russia, but we were able to succeed. And so I think I'm going to just stop there as far as Rotary. No, I'll tell you a few more things about Rotary, because I am so impressed with what's going on with these people. Did you know about half of those clubs go to the international conventions? They show up in Sydney, in Barcelona. I'm amazed. I personally have never been to an international convention. And yet my friends out across Russia take off and go. I talked with one woman who said she had been to 7 of them. I was shocked, and I thought, I'm feeling kind of out of it. Maybe I need to go to Brazil for the next one, and I think I will. But the projects that they're doing as far as social projects, service projects, would just touch your heart if you could see them in action. And be proud that Rotary all over this country, and probably your club too, has had a hand in forming these concepts that these Russians are living by now. And every meeting that I have gone to in Russia, they start with saying the 4-way test in unison. And they tell me that this is the only code of ethics that they've ever had. And this is why it's so priceless to them, because they realize the value of it. So anyway, if you ever decide that you want to go back to Russia, some of you are, how many of you have been to Russia? Quite a few, yeah. Have any of you been in the last half a dozen years? 1, 2, 3, wonderful. I think it's time to start doing these back and forth visits again. If nothing, we don't need to do the business, because Russians' businesses are now pretty well formed. They're teaching each other. They're learning by example from each other. But what we need now, I think, is just more contact between our countries, because our leaders are at such odds and don't have any understanding of each other. And I think if we could just be in the same room with them and ask them, how do you see this? What's really behind all of this? Americans and Russians would understand each other, and they would be able to understand each other's truths. You know, there are two narratives in the world right now about Russia, at least over here in this country. And one narrative is about the only point of view that we get to hear, unless we're looking into international press, media, blogs, internet. And then we find there's another narrative going on, and particularly the narrative is inside Russia too. And one narrative is that Russia is all bad. They have no reason for doing the kinds of things that they're doing, and they need to be condemned, and they need to be broken. They need to be shamed. And then the other narrative says, wait a minute, there are reasons why they're doing some of these things, and we need to understand what those reasons are. The greatest reason behind the Ukraine situation right now is because Russia is so frightened to have more NATO bases next to their borders. Now, you and I can't understand that because we've never had to worry about border problems. We have a compliant Mexico and we have a compliant Canada. But can you imagine what it would be like if we had Warsaw Pact missiles on the borders in Canada and in Mexico? We didn't even tolerate having any type of activity like this in Cuba. And look, they're still under sanctions because of it. How can we not understand that Russia has this great fear, particularly since they have been invaded so many times in their history? And everybody in that country knows their history. It's like the children learn it in the early grades, and it's a part of their souls. They're all frightened. They're deeply frightened of NATO. And the only place left that it can get that much border ground is in Ukraine. So we have to be understanding. And by the way, did you know that Gorbachev and Reagan came to the understanding before the Berlin Wall fell that if Gorbachev would get out of the way and withdraw his troops from Germany, from East Germany, that NATO would never go more than a finger's width breadth toward Russia. That lasted just as long as Reagan was in office. The next president didn't abide by that and started putting it in different places. Well, that doesn't mean anything to us over here. We just think, oh, good, they're becoming more Western like us. But the truth of the matter, the deal was broken. They're still deeply hurt about that and distrustful of us because of this. And they have more fear because they know what it feels like to be invaded over and over and over. So this is just, these two narratives don't touch places. They kind of go like this with each other. One here, one there, but never coming to some sort of compromise with what's necessary for both countries. We're obviously, we need to protect our borders. So other countries do too. This is just one tiny thing. And then we get into situations like Crimea, and this can be explained in two completely different ways. And both of them make sense when you hear them. For me, I feel like a person with bicultural lenses. It's like over here, I've been in the country 30 years. I live over there. I own property there in St. Petersburg. Obviously, my heart is here. This is where my life has been cast. I understand the American point of view, but I straddle this divide all the time, trying to bring understanding between these two factions and to get these two narratives joined so that we don't have a huge war in the future. This is the first time since the 80s that anybody has worried about a nuclear war. And the emails that began coming into my computer about a month and a half ago started talking about World War III, a nuclearized war, and a first strike. I couldn't believe that people were writing this and saying it's possible for the United States to do a first strike and knock out all of Russia's military installations that could strike back. It's totally impossible, guys. They have bombers with these weapons on them all over in the air, all over the place. They have submarines. that are loaded with those nuclear weapons. There's no way anybody could do a first strike, and yet it's being talked about. Does that make any sense to anybody in the room? I don't think so. So what we have to do is work harder to create avenues where our two people can be talking, where there's more conversation between our countries, where we examine the stereotypes that are being given on both sides. Russia's press is just as bad as our press. And how can we leap over this or get underneath it so that we begin to see the humanity on both sides, so that we don't bring the world to another nuclear brink? This is my question. So in the next year, I'm restarting. Would you believe it's craziness? I'm 78 years old. What in the world am I doing starting new programs? My kids tell me I'm crazy. And I sometimes think I am. But also, I'm one of the few people that has had 30 years there and understands both sides. And so I have to do something with this knowledge. It's a responsibility. So next year, I'm going to be starting to take delegations of Americans who want to go and meet every kind of Russian in the country. We have access to tens of thousands of people in probably 100 cities over there. We can take you any place you want to go, and you can talk with any level of people that you want to talk with. So that's just one thing. I want to start also more youth exchanges. We need to get more of their kids here and get our kids over there so that we can have this broad connection with each other that's not dependent upon just newspapers and CNN. I've got half a dozen of these projects, and what I'm trying to do now is just figure out where the time is to do them and get a little money, a little funding to go along with it. And hopefully this will begin to help, and hopefully it will stimulate other people to do the same kind of thing. Because one organization cannot do it by itself. This needs to be done. It would be so wonderful if Rotary International would take on this thing saying, look, the world has become increasingly dangerous again. What can we do in addition to what we've already been doing? How can we say the world, not just Rotarians, but the world needs to live by the four-way test? It really does. This is the best, wherever it is, this is the best recipe for goodwill in the world. And we need to be publishing this every place we go. And so many of my emails, I don't say this is a four-way test from Rotary because I don't want people to think that I'm just trying to inundate them with Rotary and that they're supposed to join. But what I hope is they will get the message. And I end up saying, we need to ask ourselves, is this the truth, what we're hearing? Is this fair? Is it fair that we should expect something of others that we don't expect of ourselves? Are these acts building friendship and goodwill? Are they beneficial for all of us and for the whole world? I don't think so. So we need to be pushing this. If any of you have any ideas, or if you would like to be on my email list, I send out an email about once a week or every 2 weeks, wrapping up what I see has happened with regard to each little minute thing that's going on with Ukraine and Crimea and Russia and EU and Washington. And because I feel like it's so important for us to get multiple points of view. We don't want just one point of view, right? We want several points of view so we can make a decision someplace in the middle about what needs to happen. And so that's kind of where I am right now. I'm in the question. How can we resolve some of this situation as people of this country? There are many more of us than there are in the Congress. And quite frankly, the Congress is not making good decisions these days. Few people would think that it is. I certainly don't want them making decisions about our future and our children's future. Thank you very much. Okay, he's put me behind the podium. And it's good. This is better, Mike, I think. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. If you would like to be on the email list, just give me your business card. If you get on that, then you'll find out about future trips and things that we could do in the future. Back here, please.
Thank you very much. It was a great presentation. I think for those of us who have never been to Russia, we have the perception here in the States that it's the evil empire. And I think you've just shown us, it's astounding the number of Rotary clubs that are in Russia. But think like we do, and as we sit here among our fellow Rotarians, we go, hey, they're just like us. So where's the disconnect between what we're getting from President Putin and Rotarians? And how do you join those two together?
Where's the connection between President Putin and Rotarians in Russia? Well, certainly there's a disconnect if you believe that. And as I said, there are two different narratives. One says that Putin wants to go to war, and Russia wants to go to war. Then the other narrative says Putin is trying to avoid war at all costs. He is just simply trying to make sure that his borders are safe and to be assured that nobody is going to be putting more missiles on his borders. And he is not a bad man. I have met Putin, members of the American ambassadors to Russia, the consul generals that served in St. Petersburg in Russia, and they worked directly with Putin for at least 3 years during their term. And the big business, the Americans who have gone over as joint venture CEOs have told me, particularly the ones with International Paper and Procter & Gamble, they have had many experiences with Putin. None of them believe what is being printed in the New York Times these days. I read the last article in the New York Times on Putin, which was 2.5 days ago. It had his face was center page. He then had they then wrote 2 whole pages on page 18 and 19 on him. And I went through that with a pen, and I marked every single piece where it was either misconstrued, it was a product of simply not understanding Russian culture. It was, in some way, it was background information was gathered from 2 people who were losers in the 1990s and never were able to get into politics. Boris Nemtsov was one of them. You may remember his name. And the other one was, I've forgotten, but I recognized his name immediately when I saw it. And so this was the background, these were the background informers for this whole 3-page article. And it was totally I could totally break down the whole thing and dispute it. And so, know that there are 2 narratives, there's not just one.
How would you describe the governance of Russia and how do they get to a democracy that means something? And how does Putin keep getting in power without, said a different way, how do you get to a democracy so that people can really vote for an elected office?
That's a good question. There has been some cut back in what we call democracy. The more the Russians have felt encircled, and the more fearful they have become of NATO, and of also the Crimea simply going to Ukraine without recognition of the fact that it had been Russian for 300 years. The more all of that has happened and the more encircled they have become much tighter. You remember after 9/11 in this country when all of a sudden everything tightened up. I was caught in Washington when 9/11 happened and I couldn't get even a plane out. And the Congress was completely shut down. Everybody was afraid of getting envelopes, so you couldn't get anything to your congress members in an envelope because they were afraid to have some white powder in it. And everything just went like this. And a lot of other things have been basically brought into some sort of control since then. So this is what's natural with anybody, particularly even a family. Well, if they feel like they're under pressure from the outside, they will bind themselves up and they will come tighter as far as their inner unit goes because they're fearful. And so that's one piece of it. As far as democracy goes, any Russian will tell you, we have a democracy. To them, it's a democracy because they are free to go and come. They're free to say what they want to. They are free to have friends. They're free to have Americans over. They can have Americans in their homes. They can travel any place in the world they want to. They can go to church as many days a week as they want to. Nobody bothers them. They can build businesses as long as they are law-abiding. So, it's degrees of democracy. Then you take a look at, this is Russia's democracy, then you take a look at somebody like the Saudis. Do they have a democracy? They're our great allies. So there are all sorts of forms of government that we don't necessarily have to be exactly like ours in order for us to be friends with them. But I would say that Russia's democracy is closer to America than the Saudis and some of our other partners over there in the Middle East.
About 14 years ago, Mikhail Gorbachev spoke here in Denver, and to a ballroom full of people for an hour and a half in Russian, berating the United States for gloating over the dissolution of the Soviet Union. And he forecasted, he said, if you guys don't go and support what is happening there now, a totalitarian government will take over again, and you will regret it. So this is your opportunity. Do you feel we missed that opportunity?
You say I missed that opportunity?
That the United States should have been supporting and helping.
Absolutely, absolutely. We cannot expect any nation to develop a full democratic system in 14 years. We have been 200 some odd years, and it still is not perfect. You know, we just can't. I mean, we can, but we do it at our own risk, and at the world's risk. Any other questions?
Right here.
Thank you
Right
very
here.
much.
I think we've run out of time, sorry. Let's thank Sharon for her time here.